Welcome to Irons United. My name is Stel. Over the summer, Irons United are going to be bringing you a series of short video specials on transfers, talking about players that may be coming to the club or players leaving the club. So do look out for them. Subscribe to the channel, let your friends know. Give us your views and thoughts about the players that we talk about in those video specials. This particular show is going to focus on the whole squad. It's going to be looking at every squad position, and I'll be giving you my personal view on what I think will or could happen during the summer. We all know that the squad needs strengthening. There's no secret about that. Many fans will agree on certain positions that we do need to strengthen on. For example, we all know that we need another backup keeper. We all know that we need another striker or two. But fans are a little bit divided on what other positions we should be strengthening on. So this particular video is going to go through every position and give you some food for thought, I guess. So it's rumoured that the board are going to give Pellegrini and Huselos a transfer budget of around £30 million. I know a lot of fans are unhappy about that. A lot of fans want to see us spend an awful lot more. But it's also understood that whatever players Pellegrini and Huselos sell, that money will also go towards transfer. So despite it being only an initial £30 million, that can be bolstered quite significantly by certain players leaving the club. So let's start with the goalie position. Well, needless to say, one of the bargains of the season, if not the bargain of the season, was Lucas Fabianski. I have to admit, I've got to hold my hand up and say that when it was announced that we'd bought him, I wasn't very excited. I actually questioned why would we want to buy a player who'd just been relegated from the Premier League and the goalie at that. Well, I was completely wrong. For £7 million, he's been an absolute inspired purchase and has fully earned his Hammer of the Year title in his first season. But we know that he's going to need backup. We're all aware that Adrian is about to leave West Ham. His contract ends in June, and he's going to want to, or he believes he's going to want to prove that he can still be a number one keeper for another club, whether that be in the Premier League or whether that be probably back in Spain. But he's certainly going to leave us with a few great memories, and the one that comes to mind is obviously him being the penalty-taking hero against Everton in the Cup. So we're looking for a backup keeper. Nathan Trott is a great talent for the future, but it's predicted that he'll be loaned out, probably to a team in the Championship, to gain some much-needed experience. I doubt Pellegrini and Huselos will want to spend too much money, or if any money at all, on a backup keeper. So it's on the cards that we could be looking at getting either a loan signing or a freebie. There's been talk about Tom Heaton, even, from Burnley. But at 33 years of age and a decent keeper as well, playing for England, he is unlikely to want to be a backup keeper to Fabianski. So as much as he'd be a great loan signing, because we wouldn't want to buy him, I don't think there's any chance of him coming to West Ham. There's also rumour that the Poland under-21 keeper, Bartholomew Dragowski, has been watched. He's signed to Fiorentina, but was loaned out to Empoli on a short-term basis. It's possible West Ham could be looking at bringing him in as a loan signing for the season, which will benefit us and benefit Fiorentina. But one would argue, why would we bring in a 21-year-old loanee who hasn't got any experience of the Premier League, rather than giving Nathan Trott a chance himself? So I think that the likelihood of that happening is pretty small. There are a couple of freebies that we could be looking at. There's Aurelio Gomez, who's still undecided on his future. Last we saw him was letting in quite a number of goals in the FA Cup final. But he's around about 37 years old, 38 years old, so I don't know if he'd be a player that we would want. There's Jonas Lossell, a 30-year-old keeper who's a free agent from Huddersfield. But again, at the age of 30, he might still think that he could be a number one keeper for another club. And then, of course, there's a player who Pellegrini already knows, and that's another 37-year-old Willy Caballero from Chelsea. It looks as if Chelsea are about to release him. We've been rumoured to be interested in him, and that might be a decent match for the two of us. So watch this space on a keeper. As I said, I don't think we're going to spend any money on a keeper. We'll be looking at getting a freebie, or we'll be looking at getting a loanee. On to our defence. I'm going to split this into three positions: right backs, left backs, and centre back positions. Well, we all know that Zabaleta has extended his contract for another season, and we also have seen how improved Ryan Fredericks has been. He's as the season's gone on, after his injuries, he's proven to be more and more solid, more and more experienced. Really, quite like him, and he's definitely going to be our right back for a few seasons from now on. Zabaleta will be a worthy backup, and even Zabaleta knows he's not going to play every game, but he's an excellent, experienced backup to have to Ryan Fredericks. We've also got Ben Johnson, who we saw briefly in one game when he actually played left back for West Ham, but he's naturally a right back. But it's quite possible, just like Nathan Trott, that Johnson will be loaned out, get a bit of experience before he's considered for the first team squad. We move on to the left back position, and I guess this is one area where most fans are going to have their own opinions on who's the better left back between Aaron Cresswell and Arthur Masuaku. They've both had, in different seasons, they've both been out injured throughout the season. They've both been out of form, inconsistent throughout the season. When they've come back, they've shown glimpses of decency. They've shown glimpses where we need strengthening. It's an odd area. And I think Pellegrini is going to move one of them on. But it's anyone's guess as to who he does move on. Pellegrini, we know, likes to play a flat back four. Now, with a flat back four set up, Cresswell is obviously the better player. Pellegrini doesn't play wing backs, but if he did, then one would argue that Masuaku would be the better left back as a wing back. I think if either of the two are going to go, I think it should be Masuaku. There's a lot of fans who argue that he's great going forward and he's a threat, etc. Well, I've got a bit of a surprise for you, I'm afraid. Masuaku has only created one goal. He's assisted in one goal throughout the season. And if it's someone that you think is more of a better attack-minded player, then you kind of want someone that's going to bring in a bit more of a return than that. So, of the two, I think Masuaku will be the one that will leave. I reckon we can get around £8 million for him. He'll probably leave and go to a European club. This rumour about Tottenham being interested is just rumour, I'm afraid. I don't see anything in that at all. Masuaku, he's a frustrating player. A lot of people love him because he does his, all these fancy tricks, and his decision making going forward leaves a lot to be desired. He wants to do one trick too many. Sometimes he should let the ball go quicker, in order to put it in a more dangerous situation. But he doesn't do that. He's indecisive. He wants to be a bit of a showman, and we can't afford to have a player as a defender being too much of a showman. So we have a whole host of left backs who could be available in the summer. Leighton Baines of Everton, Monreal of Arsenal, Moreno of Liverpool. The last two, there are going to be people going after them, I guess, from other teams. probably bigger teams than ours. But despite those freebies available, I think Pellegrini is actually going to spend some serious money here. And we've been linked to Leonardo Kutris of Olympiacos for quite some time. In fact, back last summer and back again in the transfer window in the winter, Irons United spoke about this player being possibly available. He's 23 years of age. He's appeared in 17 league games for his club, and he's assisted in 4 goals. So that's not a bad return, So he's a defender, but he's assisted in 4 goals, which is clearly better than either Creswell or Masuaku have offered throughout the whole season. If he is available, he's going to be Olympiacos are going to be looking for around £10 million for him. So if we do let one of our current left backs go for 8 mil, buying Kutris in for 10 million would be pretty good business in my eyes. We move on to the centre of defence. Pellegrini's got quite a decision to make over who backs up the very impressive duo of Diop and Balbuena. They've been superb throughout this season. Diop has been worth every penny that we paid for him. He's going to be an absolutely monumental defender as time goes on, and you can see massive clubs coming in for him in the future. And Balbuena, I mean, for £3-4 million, an absolute snip. I said earlier that Fabianski was a bargain of the season. One could argue that Balbuena was equally so for £3 million. But who's going to back these players up? Who's going to be in reserve when either of these players are unfit, injured, out of form or whatever? Well, we know Ogbonna was brought in to replace Balbuena when he was injured, and after a shaky start he did reasonably well. But Ogbonna's not a major favourite of many West Ham fans. I like him. I think he's a reasonable player, but I can see potentially Ogbonna being sold again to generate more funds. Ogbonna could go back to Italy. He could go back to Italy for maybe £5 or £6 million. Winston Reid. Do we? There's some fans are going to say that he can become our very own version of Vincent Kompany. Yes, he could if he stays fit. But Winston Reid has missed the whole season out injured, and what's going to happen? He's going to be a lot slower again after his recent injury. He's going to be off the pace. Yes, he's going to have a pre-season, but is he going to be the same sort of player that we've known in the past? He's on a long-term contract. He's only just coming back from injury, so he's not going to be that easy to sell if Pellegrini wanted to. So I think by default, Winston Reid could stay. But again, I don't think it's going to be enough for West Ham. So this is where I see Pellegrini and Huselos dipping into the transfer market again. There are other players, Reece Oxford should have been another player that we should have been praising and looking at building a career at West Ham. But he's disappeared from sight, and he's been out on loan to this club and that club and every other club. And it looks like Osberg are going to be buying him for around £3 million. What a fall from grace. So there are some players that are going to be available for nothing. Phil Jones, Phil Jagielka, Gary Cahill, all free agents. But as I said, I think Ogbonna will go for around 5 mil, and I think we're going to be looking at bringing in Guillermo Maripan of Alaves, who again we've been looking at for quite some time. He's a no-nonsense defender. Everything I hear about him kind of reminds me of what Balbuena's like, and if he's anything like Balbuena, he'd be an absolute perfect addition to the squad. But he's going to be available for around about 10 million. So I think there'll be some serious money spent, and we will be bringing in someone like Maripan. We could, of course, look at some other experienced centre-backs. There's Nicolas Otamendi, who apparently is surplus to requirements at Man City, but at 31 years old, on a salary of around £120,000 a week, I don't think we'll want to be spending £10 million on him. I'd rather spend that money on Maripan. Now we move on to our midfield, and I'm going to split this again into three areas: right mid, centre mid, and left mid. We'll start off on the right. We've got quite a number of players that can play in that position, who have done reasonably well throughout the season. Despite his bad injury, Yarmolenko has shown glimpses of what he can really offer, and I'm really looking forward to him coming back. It was such a shame that he had that serious injury when he was really beginning to show some true form. But I think he'll be back stronger and ready to go for the new season. Then we have Antonio. Well, what a revelation he's been in the second half of the season. Before the season started, I was one that was advocating that we should maybe sell him. He looked unfit, he looked unhappy, he was overweight, kept getting injured. Every time he played, he didn't look like he really wanted to play. He really looked out of sorts, and I thought Antonio was just a player that was just waiting to be gotten rid of. But the second half of the season has been a complete transformation. He's played with confidence, he's got his swagger back, he's scoring goals, he's creating goals, and of course, you know, his often ridiculous goal celebrations really bring a smile to West Ham faces. So I've changed my mind on Antonio, and I want him to stay, and I think there'll be healthy competition between him and Yarmolenko for that right side of midfield. But there's other players. There's Diangana, who's shown glimpses of what he can produce, but he's not necessarily been consistent. And then, of course, there's Nasri, who likes to play on that side of the pitch as well, but also as an attacking midfielder. I think with Diangana, I think Pellegrini's going to see what's going to happen over the summer to decide whether he's going to keep him in the first team squad or whether he's going to loan him out. But for a player that's already had the taste of the first team, the last thing he's going to want to do is to be loaned out. So he'll be there or thereabouts in the squad, I reckon. Plus, of course, we're going to have to consider, the ratio between foreign players and English players, and that's going to take some. That's going to be a consideration. I think Diangana, because of his age and for the number of years he's been at West Ham, kind of counts as a homegrown player. Correct me if I'm wrong, guys, but that might have some bearing on keeping him in the squad. As for Nasri, it's been a real shame that he's been consistently injured, because when he has played, he's been a bit of a game changer. Look what he did when he played against Huddersfield. You know, he really did change the game around when he came on. But I think we've been really hit by injuries. We've had more than our fair share of injuries. We keep having them every season, and I think because of that, I think Nasri will be released. I don't think he'll be kept on at West Ham. Another player who prefers to play from the right side of midfield, or who has been used in the centre of mid, has been Robert Snodgrass. You know, another player that I slated before the season started. I just didn't think he was good enough for West Ham. You know, but I think for what I've seen of him this season, he's been decent. Really, really decent player. He's a real workhorse. He really tries hard. He loves playing for West Ham. You know, and I've been impressed by him. But the downside is I don't think we'll get much more out of Snodgrass. It will be much of the same. You know, and I think Pellegrini's going to be looking to step it up next season. He's going to want players that can produce more, that can offer more. And I think because of that, Snodgrass is going to be sold. I think he'll go for around 10 to 12 million pounds, and we'll be bringing in a player that will just give us just that little bit more. Again, I know he's loved by the West Ham fans. He's certainly impressed me this season, but I just don't think he's going to be offering enough to be kept on. Over on the left side of midfield, well, it seems that there's Anderson and there's no one else. Everybody seems to want to play on the right side of midfield. So he doesn't have an awful lot of competition for that area. So I think this is one area that Pellegrini and Huselos will be looking at strengthening. I think they're going to be looking at a player that can play on that side of the pitch, or can play in attacking midfield. And there are a couple of players that could be available to West Ham. The first is someone else on a freebie from Porto, Yassine Brahimi. Again, he's another player that we've spoken about at Irons United in the past. Again, he's a player that we did a transfer special on last summer and over the winter. Very, very talented Algerian international. Out of contract, as I said. Can play as a winger, can play as an attacking midfielder. He's scored 10 goals this season with 2 assists. He's had Champions League experience as well, so he's a real talent, and he's someone that we could be looking at bringing in. But one would argue, well, if he's had experience of Champions League, why would he come to West Ham? I think any player that is brought to the Premier League from a foreign league, especially a Portuguese league, with no disrespect to the Portuguese league itself, I think any player will see it as a step up. I think they'll see it as a platform, and I think they'll see it as an opportunity to show what they're capable of doing in the best league in the world. So I think the Pellegrini project will appeal to him. I think he'll be the lure of a Premier League contract will appeal to him, and I think he's someone that we'll definitely look at getting in the summer. But there's another player that could either play either on the left side or the right side of midfield, or even as an attacking midfielder, and that's Xherdan Shaqiri, the player that a lot of people say we should have signed from Stoke instead of Arnautovic. Controversial? You let me know. There are rumours that Liverpool are going to let him go. I find that really surprising. He's an excellent player. You know, he's proven that he can step it up by moving from Stoke to Liverpool. Liverpool got him for 13 mil. Quite a snip, really. And if they are looking at letting him go, and he's going to go for more or less the same sort of price, then that would be an investment well worth making. He's played 24 times for Liverpool, mainly off the bench, and has scored 6 goals in the league. And he's only 27, so he's got time on his side. You know, he's a good attacking player. He's strong. You know, he could be a really good bit of business if we went in for him. I'd like him to come to West Ham. I think it'd be a really good signing. So on to central midfield. We've got again a number of players who can play in that position, and we've used throughout the season. We've relied on mainly 2, Declan Rice and Mark Noble, but we've got Wiltshire, Sanchez, Lanzini, Pedro Obiang. You know, got quite a number of players. Snodgrass has been used there. You know, quite a number of players who've been used in that central midfield role. Lanzini's only just come back from injury, as we know. He's had a good few games, but with a pre-season behind him, I think he's going to come back a lot stronger. Sanchez, I think he's going to be released. I don't think we'll keep him on. He's 33 years old now, and I just don't think... if we've got some other players on our minds, I don't think Sanchez will stay. Pedro Obiang, you know, what a shame. You know, he's a player that I just thought would really take off at West Ham and just hasn't. Apparently he's not happy in England, you know, and he's kind of looking to go back to Italy. Yes, I know he's Spanish, but he played in Italy. And I think he will go. He'll go for around £10 million again to generate even more funds for the squad. And it's a shame, you know. And then, of course, we have Wiltshire. Now, a Jack Wiltshire, a fit Jack Wiltshire, will be a benefit to any squad. You know, he's probably one of the most talented, technical English players we have. But his injuries and always injured, and it's such a shame because, you know, we saw glimpses of what he can do technically, you know, in the last few games when he came on, and it's a shame. It's a real shame, and you know, if Wiltshire stayed injury free throughout a season, he'll be a player that can create so many chances and just get you points from making goals, scoring goals, and what have you. But is he going to be fit? You know, and I just think West Ham are going to look to bolster that central midfield position again. There are a number of players that we can possibly bring in. There's been talk about Isaac Hayden of Newcastle, Moy of Huddersfield, Seri of Fulham. I think any of these players are going to cost around a 20-odd million pound mark, you know, so it's possible. But I think there's another player that's around the same sort of price that is Chalabos of Real Madrid. Dani Chalabos, 22 years of age, hardly getting a look in for Real Madrid. He was voted as the best player of the Under-21 Championships, and he's a big talent. And he's a very creative player, and actually he could be someone that could compete with Lanzini in that position. Played 23 times for Madrid, scored 3 goals, but, you know, again, bit part player. So there are a number of options that Pellegrini could be looking at bringing in. And it won't surprise me if he brings in a couple of midfielders, maybe a player that can play in attacking midfield or as a winger. Like I said, Brahimi, Shaqiri, and Dani Chalabos is another player that will fit that bill. So I think there'll be quite a bit of movement there in the centre of midfield. Then we move on to our strikers. Need I go over the fiasco it's been at times with our 4 strikers? We've had strikers who have been out all season because of injury. We have strikers who have been rumoured to have refused to have played. Perez, not Arnautovic. We have had strikers who want to leave but stay, but leave but stay, you know, and that was Arnautovic and Hernandez. You know, it's been really, really disruptive to the squad, I think, in the way our strikers have been throughout the whole of the season. Up to about a month ago, I was convinced that Carroll, Arnautovic, Perez and Hernandez would all leave. Now the feeling is that we're going to be keeping Arnautovic, and the other 3 will definitely go on their merry way. Carroll will be a huge relief off the salary bill. I don't think for a minute that this talk about offering him a pay-as-you-play contract is at all true, because if that was the case, he'd still be on, you know, a basic salary of, I don't know, 40, 50 grand a week, and then, you know, bonuses if he played, bonuses if he scored goals and stuff like that. Well, if we're going to give him 40, 50 grand a week just for the sake of him staying fit, we might as well give that 40, 50 grand a week to a player, to another striker, bring in another striker, you know, and a younger striker and someone that's not as injury prone. So I don't think for a minute that rumour is true. For Perez and Hernandez, you know, Perez actually, you know, is a player that could actually, you know, bring an awful lot to West Ham. But, you know, if a player's unhappy, and there's rumour that he is unhappy, as Hernandez has been, then let him go. You know, I think we can bring in around about 17 million between the 2 of them. You know, so again, that's 17 million that can go towards the budget kitty. So no, they won't stay either, and I reckon they'll both be sold. As for Arnautovic, do I want to see him go? Yes, to be honest. I wish we'd sold him at Christmas time. I think what he did, or what his brother did, really disrupted the team. It wasn't good. Who's to say that it won't happen again if another Chinese team come in for him again next Christmas? You know, and he won't go. He'll be kept on, but you know, I wouldn't have minded if he did leave. Now, Arnie, you've really got to show what you're capable of doing. You've got to get back to your best. I know you finished with 11 goals last season, but you went through a big spell of doing nothing for the team. You know, after saying that you were going to stay, you know, they'll never forget that night after the Wimbledon game in the Cup where we got knocked out, and the announcement came out that Arnie was staying, and he's staying for an improved contract. What bad timing. What bad timing. Walking out of that Wimbledon stadium and hearing that, you know, it didn't bring a smile to any fan face, to be honest with you. And then he went through a number of weeks, months without scoring a goal, and then he came back to life again in the last few games of the season. So he finished on 11 goals, but imagine what he would have finished on if he'd been focused throughout the whole season instead of just snippets of the season. My feeling is we need two strikers to back up Arnautovic, and it's a tricky one, this, because I know that the main target, or supposedly so, was Maxi Gomez of Celta Vigo. He's a young player. He's 22, 23 years of age. He scored 13 goals for the beleaguered Celta Vigo, and if you can score that many goals for a club that's struggling, imagine what you can do for a club that will be on form, which I believe West Ham will be next season. But all of a sudden, £40 million is too much, but we kind of knew that he was going to be going for that sort of money if Celta Vigo stayed up. Apparently that transfer value would have gone down to around 22 million if Celta Vigo had been relegated. So we kind of knew, so why all of a sudden are we not going for him? And there's this rumour about Arsenal sniffing around. I reckon that's rumour, just to get the transfer value up even more. So I don't know if that transfer is dead. And if we did actually go for Maxi Gomez, I think we'll be bringing another striker in for a lot less money. And that takes me on to other players that we're rumoured to be sniffing around. So let's say we do buy Maxi Gomez for 40 million, and then bring in, say, Solomon Rondon, who was on loan at Newcastle throughout last season, West Brom player. His release clause is about 16 mil. So having two strikers for a combined total of around 55, 56 million pounds isn't actually that bad. And I know Rondon's 29 years old, but he's also scored 11 goals, just like Arnautovic has, and he's assisted in 7 goals as well. So, a little bit on the older side, but, for 16 million, he's not bad. Then, of course, there's rumour that our second choice target is Mitrovic of Fulham. He's available for around £25 million, and again at 24 years of age. I actually thought he was a lot older. Whenever I look at his photos, I think he's around his early 30s. No disrespect, Mitrovic. But for around £25 million at 24 years of age, he would be another player that we should be looking at getting in. Scored 11 goals, 3 assists for a very poor Fulham side. So he'd be a good move as well. Then, of course, we've got a number of freebies that we could be looking at. The mad, bad Mario Balotelli. Currently playing for Marseille. He's on a free at the end of the season, 14 appearances and scored 8 goals. That's not bad. But do we really want Arnautovic and Balotelli in the same squad? Can you imagine that dressing room? So I don't know. It's possible, if Pellegrini thinks he can offer something. Balotelli's only 28 years of age, so, he's still got some life in him. So who knows? That's possible. We should have gone maybe for Giroud. It looks like Chelsea are going to extend his contract. I thought he wanted to go back to France, but Giroud was certainly one that I would have maybe liked to have seen. Another freebie. Then we've got Sturridge and Welbeck. Well, consolation is if we got one of them, they wouldn't score against us because they always scored against us. But no, I don't want Sturridge or Welbeck. Again, 2 players, injury prone. And then there's another just slightly odd one, Max Cruz of Werder Bremen. Now he's 31 years of age, but he scored 11 goals and assisted in 9. That's not a bad return, and he's available. Now I don't know if other teams will be going for him, but why not? Apparently Crystal Palace were after him. Well, if Palace are after him, why not us? And if he's on a freebie, plus the purchase of one of the other strikers that I mentioned, that might not be a bad shout. And then the final player that we've been rumoured to be linked to is a loan signing for Iheanacho from Leicester. Again, is a player that we were rumoured to be interested in the past. So maybe, irony. He was purchased by Pellegrini to go to City, but Guardiola let him go for that crappy player called Gabriel Jesus. So what are you doing, Guardiola? Didn't you see the quality in Iheanacho? Finally, we've got a number of players who've been out on loan throughout last season. Some of them have done pretty well. There's Byram, has come back from his injury, played well for Nottingham Forest. But as I said, I think we've got enough cover in as a right back, so I don't think we'll be looking to keep him on. There's also Milson Fernandes. He was loaned out to Fiorentina, 28 appearances and scoring 2 goals. And then there's Jordan Hugill, poor Jordan Hugill, loaned out to Middlesbrough, played 37 times for him, scoring 6 goals and assisted in 2. But I don't think we'll keep any of them on. I think they'll all be sold. I reckon we could generate around about 15-16 million pounds for those 3 players, and I think they probably will be sold. Then we've got some youngsters, some under-23s who we've loaned out. Marcus Brown has done really well for Oxford. He's played for him 34 times, scoring 6 goals, assisting in 3. Josh Cullen, who helped Charlton to the playoff finals. And there's been other players that we've been sort of loaned out. But Pellegrini will look at all the youngsters and make a decision, including Nathan Hollands, Coventry, a few others, and he'll decide whether he'll bring them into the first team squad or whether he will loan them out again. Nathan Holland's an interesting one because he could provide competition for Anderson on the left side of midfield. So to summarise, I think the players that will be leaving are Ogbonna for around 5 mil, Oxford for around 3 mil, Andy Carroll will be released, Snodgrass will leave for about 10, Adrian will be released, Obiang will leave for around 10, Hernandez for around 12, Nasri will be released, Byram for around 3 million, Hugill for around 5 million, Masuaku for around 8 million, Perez for around 4 million, and Fernandes for around 8 million. That's a combined total of £68 million. Okay, let's take 20% off for agency fees and stuff like that. That still leaves around 53, 54, 55 million pounds. If we add that to the 30 million transfer kitty, that could give Pellegrini around 85 million pounds to spend. So the players to bring in: a keeper on loan or a keeper on a free signing, someone like Caballero. Kutris, 10 million. Maripan, 10 million. Ceballos or Shaqiri for around 13 to 20 million. Brahimi on a free. Let's say we do buy Gomez for 40 million and Balotelli on a free, or Mitrovic for around 25 million and Rondon on 16 million. So that's altogether around about 53 to 80 million pounds, 85 million pounds. So the money we generate in transfer fees, plus the kitty that we're going to be given by the board, could equally match the money that we'll spend on bringing players into the club. So we're looking at that around about 80, 85 million pounds going out and 80, 85 million pounds coming in. So it's doable. But let me know what you think. Subscribe to the channel, to Irons United. Tell us what you think. Do you think any of the players I've mentioned leaving or potentially coming to the club are right? Are there other players that you know about that could be leaving? Are there other players that you know about that could be coming to West Ham? Let us know. As I said, this is my view. It's not official. I'd love to be in the know, but I'm not. So I can only tell you what the rumours I read about, what the board, what the club is saying, what Pellegrini's saying, what there is in the papers on social media. And I've just brought it all together and I've given my view with a few personal points like the Masuaku situation and so on. So let us know your thoughts. There's one more rumour to cover before I go, and that is that of Manuel Pellegrini. Does he go to Barcelona or does he go to Sevilla? Well, if that's true, bring Rafa in pronto. You know, we know he's not happy at Newcastle. He was always the board's first choice, so why not? You know, but I think that's just gossip. I think Pellegrini will be here. I think the board will back him. He'll be here in the summer. He'll be here in the new season to take West Ham to the next level. And I really actually do think Pellegrini, with some shrewd signings in the summer, will take West Ham to the next level, and hopefully will be qualifying for Europe at the end of next season. Right, that's it. That's me done. As I said, let me know your thoughts. Subscribe to the channel. Tell your mates about Irons United. Have a great summer, and come on, you Irons. Just as an addendum, one final player that's come to light is Moussa Marega, another Porto player. Apparently we've agreed his release clause of 35 million. Another 28-year-old striker with about 11 league goals, plus a number of Champions League goals. I don't know if this is true, but I've added it to the end of this video that I've made. Could it be Marega and Rondon? That's now the next rumour. Combined total of 60 million for two strikers. That's if we're not going for Celta Vigo's Maxi Gomez, and if we're not going for Mitrovic either.